There was once a Zen master who lived in the mountains, in a monastery so quiet you could hear a leaf fall in winter. People traveled for miles to hear him speak, not because his words were many, but because his silences were full. One day a group of students arrived, full of questions, worries, doubts, and a kind of jittery hunger for truth. Their minds were noisy. You could see it in the way their eyes darted, their legs bounced, and their mouths interrupted even their own thoughts. The master waited for them to settle, but they never did. Finally, he stood and walked to the center of the room. In his hand, he held a small carved wooden monkey. "This," he said, holding it up, "is your mind." The students chuckled. "No, really," he continued. "This monkey is you. It jumps. It chatters. It wants a banana. Then it wants an answer. Then it remembers something from 3 years ago and clings to it like a vine. The monkey mind never sits still, and it never shuts up." One student, bolder than the rest, raised his hand. "So what do we do? How do we shut it up?" The master smiled. "You don't shut it up, you watch it." He sat cross-legged on the wooden floor and closed his eyes. "At first," he said, "you'll notice the monkey swinging between thoughts. I'm tired. Did I leave the stove on? I hope I'm doing this right." The monkey panics when it's not entertained. But if you sit long enough, something interesting happens. The students leaned in. The monkey gets tired, it slows down, and eventually it stops swinging. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped feeding it. He opened his eyes again. This is meditation, not forcing stillness, but allowing the storm to pass. The bold student frowned. "But what if it never stops? What if my monkey has ADH and a double espresso?" The master laughed. "Then you have more to practice than most." They all laughed with him, but beneath the humor was a pulse of truth. The monkey mind is not an enemy. It's a mirror. In the days that followed, the students tried to meditate as the master had taught them. At first it was chaos. One could not stop thinking about his ex-girlfriend. Another couldn't sit still for more than 2 minutes. One claimed his mind was playing the soundtrack to Kung Fu Panda on a loop. The master said nothing. Instead, he led them to the garden and pointed to a koi pond. The surface was still. "This is what the mind looks like when it is not stirred," he said. "You can see the sky in it. The reflection is true." He then tossed a pebble into the water. Ripples spread, distorting the sky. The clouds wobbled. The surface danced in disruption. "Every thought is a pebble," he said. "One thought is fine, but we don't throw one, we throw 100. Every minute, one of the students sighed, frustrated. "So we're doomed. You're saying the goal is to have no thoughts?" The master smiled. "I'm saying the goal is to stop throwing stones. Let the pond settle. Let the thoughts come and go, but don't chase them." Weeks passed. The students practiced. Some found moments of clarity. Some still struggled. One morning, the bold student approached the master and said, "I sat for an hour yesterday. No peace, just thoughts, just noise." The master nodded. "Good." The student blinked. "Good? I failed." "You saw the noise." "That's progress. Most people are so tangled in thought they don't even know they're thinking. You observed? That's the beginning of awakening." The student was quiet. Then he asked, "Do you still have a monkey mind?" The master chuckled. "Of course, but now the monkey is more like a pet than a wild animal." That night the master told them one last story. "There was once a man," he said, "who lived at the base of a mountain. Every morning he woke to birdsong and brewed tea. But his mind was filled with rage, not at anyone in particular, just a constant hum of frustration, like a mosquito in the soul. He tried chanting, he tried exercise, he tried therapy. Nothing worked. One day he climbed the mountain to ask a hermit what to do. The hermit handed him a glass jar and said, "Catch the mosquito, then come back." The man tried for days, weeks. Finally, one day, he stopped trying. He sat still, and in the silence, the mosquito landed inside the jar on its own. The master leaned forward. The mosquito was never the problem. His resistance to it was. That night the students slept differently. Some still wrestled with thought. But now they watched it with new eyes, not as a war to win, but as weather to witness. Because the monkey mind only controls you when you try to cage it. Let it swing, and eventually it swings itself to sleep. It was a cloudy afternoon when a curious young man visited a Zen master known for his silence more than his speeches. The young man had read dozens of books, attended every spiritual seminar he could afford, and watched hours of enlightenment gurus on YouTube. He arrived at the monastery with a notepad, 3 pens, and a voice recorder. The master welcomed him in silence and served him tea. As the student introduced himself with an overwhelming stream of credentials, theories, and insights from different traditions, the master simply listened. Then came the tea. The master poured slowly into the student's cup. Steam curled upwards, the tea rising near the brim. The student kept talking about consciousness, chakras, inner child healing, when suddenly the tea spilled over. The cup overflowed, spilling onto the table and into the student's lap. "Stop! It's full!" the student gasped, jumping up. The master finally spoke. "Like this cup," he said, "you are full of your own opinions, assumptions, and knowledge. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" Silence. The student sat back down, a little wet, a lot embarrassed. That moment, awkward, small, and soaked in tea, would change his life. Because here's the secret no one tells you. You can't learn anything new if you think you already know everything. Days passed. The young man decided to stay at the monastery, humbled by the tea incident. At first, he resisted the idea of unlearning. "How do I empty my cup?" he asked the master one morning. The master handed him a broom. "Start with the floor," he said. So the young man swept. At first he treated it like a task, but as days turned to weeks, something subtle happened. The motion became meditative. His thoughts started to slow. His shoulders relaxed. The broom became an extension of him. No thinking, just sweeping. He didn't realize it then, but the dust he was clearing wasn't just from the floor, it was from his mind. One evening he sat with the master by the koi pond. "I used to think Zen was about mastering the universe," he said. "Now I think it's about mastering how I hold a teacup." The master smiled. "That's closer to the truth than most ever get." The young man nodded. "I've stopped searching for answers. I think I'm starting to understand the questions." The next morning, a new visitor arrived, a professor from the city, highly regarded and well-read. He introduced himself, sat down with the master, and immediately began lecturing. "Zen is essentially a form of cognitive behavioral adjustment," he explained. "Of course, the neuroplasticity aspect is fascinating." The master said nothing. Instead, he reached for the teapot. The young man, now a few weeks wiser, watched with a grin. He already knew what was coming. The master poured the tea until it overflowed once again, right into the professor's notebook. The professor stood in outrage. "What are you doing?" The master simply bowed. "Come back," he said, "when your cup is empty." The cup is a metaphor, yes, but it's also a mirror, because we all walk around like full cups, overflowing with opinions, assumptions, judgments, and mental noise. We scroll, skim, binge, argue, repost, and rarely pause to ask, do I even have room for something new? Zen doesn't fill you up. It empties you out. Later that week, the young man noticed something strange. He was smiling more. His shoulders, once high and tense, were now loose. He didn't need answers as urgently. He started appreciating questions. Like, why am I always racing to the next thing? What am I trying to prove? Who am I without all the labels? He started to notice that most of his stress wasn't from the world, but from trying to carry too much of it in his mind. He sat with the master and said, "I feel lighter, like I've put something down, but I'm not sure what." The master handed him the same teacup from their first day. "You put down what didn't belong in your cup," he said. "That's the beginning of wisdom." Zen teaches us this. You don't need more. You need less of what's not true. You don't need to keep pouring. You need to know when to stop. You don't need to fill your life. You need to make space in it. The young man eventually left the monastery, but he took the lesson with him. He still drank tea every morning. He still had a to-do list. He still had a phone, a job, and bills to pay. But he was no longer full of noise. He allowed pauses. He asked better questions. And when people came to him asking for advice, he'd pour them tea, slowly, carefully. And when the cup was almost full, he'd pause and say, "Are you sure you have space for this?" Because sometimes wisdom doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from knowing what to let go. A student once approached the Zen master after a restless night. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his breath trembled like leaves in a storm. "I can't take it anymore," the student said. "My past, it follows me everywhere. Regret, shame, things I should have done, things I never should have said." The master nodded slowly. Then he asked, "Have you ever been shot by an arrow?" The student blinked. "No?" "Well," the master said, "if you were, would it hurt?" "Of course. And what if immediately after someone shot you with another arrow, right in the same place?" The student winced. "That would be unbearable." "Exactly," the master said. "The first arrow is what life does to us. The second is what we do to ourselves." That student didn't speak for a moment. Then he asked, "So, you're saying I've been shooting myself?" The master nodded. "Over and over, most people do." Let's pause, because this is a story you might be living right now without realizing it. Life throws the first arrow. It stings. You lose someone, you fail. You're embarrassed, rejected, hurt. But instead of letting the wound breathe, you twist the blade. You replay the moment 100 times. You build a story around it. You use it to define yourself. This is who I am now. This is my scar. That's the second arrow. That's self-inflicted. Back to the student, he asked, "How do I stop firing the second arrow?" "By watching your mind," the master said. "It will try to relive pain. It will ask you to carry the same memory like a burden. Don't believe it. Observe it instead." "But how do I observe it?" the student said. "When it feels so real?" "Like watching clouds pass," the master said. "You don't chase the clouds. You don't try to stop them. You just notice them and let them go." That day, the student sat longer than usual in meditation. At first, it was agony. His brain screamed with regret. His heart pounded like guilt was chasing it with a hammer. But something subtle began to shift. He stopped believing every thought. He stopped reacting to every emotion. He started to see the second arrow as optional. Here's something they don't teach in school. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is the story. One's real. The other is recycled. Let's break it down with a real-world moment. Imagine someone insults you in public. That's the first arrow. Ouch. But then, your mind replays the insult for 3 days. You think, why did they say that? What did I do wrong? Maybe everyone thinks that about me. You begin doubting yourself. You start avoiding people. You feel less. None of that is caused by the insult. That's all the second arrow. The Zen student once asked, "Does the second arrow ever go away completely?" The master replied, "Not always. But you can learn not to pick it up." Over time, the student noticed something else. His triggers didn't vanish, but they lost their power. He'd still feel hurt, but it didn't own him. He'd still remember the past, but it didn't define him. He said, "It's like I still get hit, but now I don't bleed for days." The master smiled. "Good. That means you're healing from within." There's a dangerous belief in the modern world that every emotion must be analyzed, dissected, journaled about, talked out, therapized, posted. Sometimes that's healthy, but sometimes you're just handing yourself another arrow. You don't have to make everything a story. You don't have to label every feeling. You don't have to scratch every itch in your mind. Some things just need space, silence, stillness. Let the wound breathe. It knows how to close. One day, the student encountered a stranger crying by the river. "My heart is broken," she said. "He left. He said I wasn't enough." The student sat with her, listened. Then he said softly, "You were just hit by the first arrow. Please don't reach for the second." She asked, "How?" Don't repeat his words in your own voice. Don't let his choice become your identity. Grieve the moment, but don't build a home in it. She was quiet for a long time. Then she let the river take her tears. This is what Zen stories do. They don't fix your life. They remind you that maybe you're holding the suffering tighter than it's holding you. Maybe you can begin again by simply not adding more pain to the pain. One final parable. A monk once asked, "Master, why do I suffer?" The master said, "Because you believe everything your mind says." So the question is, what second arrow have you been carrying? And what if you set it down? Not next week, not after one more quote, not after they apologize. Now let it fall and watch what peace rushes in to take its place. In the quiet hush of an early morning forest, dew still clinging to the tips of grass and the air rich with the scent of wet earth, a Zen master and his student walked in silence. Their sandals barely made a sound on the soft path. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. It felt full, full of meaning, full of presence. As they walked deeper into the forest, the master suddenly stopped and pointed to a lone bamboo tree growing beside a rock. It stood tall, thin, and impossibly straight, its green stalks swaying gently with the morning breeze. Yet it also bowed slightly, as if showing reverence to the earth that cradled it. The student looked at it curiously. "Why have we stopped, Master?" The old man folded his hands behind his back and said, "That bamboo is a lesson." "A lesson?" the student repeated, puzzled. The master nodded slowly. "Bamboo is the perfect symbol of patience and resilience. Let me tell you something not everyone knows. When bamboo is first planted, it doesn't grow at all for years. Nothing. You water it. You care for it. You wait. And still, nothing appears above ground." The student furrowed his brow. "Years of nothing? That sounds like failure." The master smiled. "That's what most people think. They give up. But what they don't see is that the bamboo is growing, just not where the eye can see. It's growing underground. Its roots are stretching far and wide, building a foundation strong enough to support a sudden explosive growth. And then, after all that waiting—" He paused, pointing higher up the stalk. "It shoots up, sometimes over 90 feet tall in just weeks." The student's eyes widened. "So, all the growth happened suddenly?" "No," said the master. "All the visible growth happened suddenly. But the real growth, what matters most, was happening the whole time. Just hidden." The patience in stillness. The story of the bamboo tree isn't just a botanical miracle. It's a mirror for our lives, for our frustrations, for the times we're doing everything right, but it feels like we're stuck in place, like we're being punished with stillness. But in Zen, stillness is not punishment. It's preparation. How often do we plant seeds in our own lives, new habits, relationships, careers, and expect instant sprouts? When we don't see results in a few weeks or months, we doubt. We dig up the soil, wondering if the seed was bad. We question ourselves. But bamboo doesn't question. It knows the process. Sometimes the greatest progress is invisible. You're building strength under the surface, quietly, steadily, preparing for your moment to rise. Root work is real work. In Zen teachings, the bamboo is a teacher because it asks us to trust the unseen. You meditate daily, yet your mind still races. You practice compassion, yet you still get angry. You study the path, but feel no closer to enlightenment. But underneath, things are shifting. The mind, like the soil, doesn't transform overnight. Meditation doesn't erase the ego instantly. It's like watering the seed. The roots, our character, our emotional resilience, our discipline, those are what grow first. And they grow slowly, out of sight. That's the test. Can you keep watering something you can't see? Can you stay loyal to the process when results don't show up on your timeline? When the world only sees the shoot years later, when the bamboo finally rockets upward, people gasp at how tall it becomes. They marvel at how overnight success came to be. What they don't see is the 5 years of nothingness, the quiet toil, the daily devotion, the storms weathered underground. Humans are the same. A woman trains for a decade, then suddenly wins a championship. People call her lucky. A man writes books for 20 years in silence, then one becomes a bestseller. People ask, where did he come from? They don't see the root work, the forest of failure behind the single stalk of success. Zen teaches us not to crave recognition, not to force the shoot before the roots are ready. If you rise too soon, you topple. True growth honors timing. The power of flexibility. But the bamboo doesn't just grow tall, it bends. During heavy winds, most trees break, their branches snap, their trunks split. But bamboo, it sways, it dances, it moves with the wind, not against it. And after the storm, it's still standing. Flexibility is strength disguised. In life, we're often told to be rigid, stand our ground, don't back down, be firm. But Zen whispers something else. Be water, be wind, be bamboo. Adaptability isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When life throws storms your way, illness, heartbreak, failure, don't crack under pressure. Bend, yield, flow. And then, when it passes, rise again. The empty core. Have you ever looked inside a bamboo stalk? It's hollow. To many, that may seem like a flaw, like something's missing. But to a Zen practitioner, it's perfect. The hollow core represents emptiness, a central teaching in Buddhism. Not emptiness as in nothingness, but emptiness as in freedom. Freedom from clutter, from ego, from overthinking. Because the bamboo is empty, it is light. It moves gracefully. It echoes the wind and the birds. It is open to receive and release. The more we empty our minds of clutter, the need to be right, the hunger to impress, the fear of failure, the more freely we move through life. To be full of self is to be weighed down. To be empty is to be open. The lesson. The students stood in silence, watching the bamboo sway. The forest around them buzzed quietly with life. Birds chirped, leaves rustled. "I understand now, Master," the student said finally. "Growth is not always visible." The master smiled. "Correct, and the tallest ones often grew the longest in silence." "And bending doesn't mean weakness." "Number it means you'll survive what others break under." The student knelt to touch the bamboo stalk. Cool, smooth, strong. He whispered, "Thank you," to the tree. The master nodded. "When you're lost in doubt or weary from waiting, remember the bamboo. Quiet, resilient, empty, alive, and rising." A young monk was sent by his master to meditate alone by a river. The instruction was simple. Sit, watch, let the river teach you. So the monk built a small platform under a tree and began his daily meditation. For hours each day he sat cross-legged, back straight, eyes gently closed. The sound of the water became his metronome, the wind in the leaves his lullaby. For a few days everything was peaceful, until one afternoon, as the sun began its slow dip behind the hills, the monk's meditation was interrupted. He felt a sudden jolt, a soft bump. Something had struck his small boat. His eyes opened. Floating gently toward him was another wooden boat. Empty, no oars, no passenger, just drifting, aimless. The monk sighed and pulled the boat away, returning to his practice. But the next day it happened again. Bump, and the next. Bump. Soon the monk grew irritated. "Whose boat is this?" he muttered under his breath. "Why do they keep leaving it untied? How many times must I deal with this?" His tranquility began to erode. Meditation turned into distraction. His calm gave way to low-level resentment, until one morning, after being bumped for the 7th time, the monk leapt to his feet in anger. "Who keeps sending this boat?" he shouted at the river. "Show yourself!" He waded into the water, grabbed the drifting boat by its edge, and prepared to launch into a scolding rage. But as he looked inside, nothing. Again it was empty. And that's when the monk realized it had always been empty. The boat is always empty. The story of the empty boat is one of Zen's most famous parables, and for good reason. On the surface, it's simple. A monk gets annoyed. A boat keeps bumping into him. He thinks someone is messing with him, only to discover no one is there. But the deeper meaning? It's about our reactions. When someone cuts us off in traffic, we react. When a friend forgets to text back, we react. When a stranger says something rude, we react. We assume intent. We assign motive. We create an enemy where often there is only an empty boat, drifting. What if the offense wasn't personal? What if the person who hurt you was acting out of their own pain, unconscious of the damage they caused? What if, like the boat, they were just drifting in their own chaos? The ego's favorite game. Blame Our Ego is a master at assigning blame. It loves to believe everything revolves around us. If someone bumps into our peace, it must be personal, intentional, deliberate. But that kind of thinking poisons the soul. It keeps us trapped in a cycle of unnecessary suffering. Zen invites us to ask, what if I stop taking everything personally? The world isn't out to get you. Most people aren't even thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves, their problems, their fears, just like you are. The more we personalize everything, the more we suffer. The moment we see the boat is empty, we reclaim our peace. Reactions are your responsibility. The monk's frustration wasn't caused by the boat. It was caused by his reaction to the boat. This is a subtle but powerful distinction. Someone can push you, but only you decide whether to push back. Someone can insult you, but only you decide whether to absorb it. Someone can ghost you, cheat you, lie to you, but only you decide how long you bleed. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is your reaction. Zen teaches us to pause, observe, and choose. What you carry shows up in silence. The reason the monk grew agitated wasn't the boat. It was what he brought to the river. If your heart is filled with unresolved anger, the smallest disturbance feels like an attack. If your mind is cluttered with fear, every silence feels like abandonment. The river is neutral. The boat is neutral. Life is, at its core, neutral. It's our interpretation that creates chaos. The monk thought he was meditating to find peace, but Zen shows us true peace is when nothing has to happen for you to remain calm. No perfect river, no silence, no control, just presence. You are bumping into yourself. Every interaction, every relationship, every disturbance, it's all a mirror. That annoying coworker? Mirror. That ex who betrayed you? Mirror. That social media comment that ruined your morning? Mirror. The boat doesn't show you the world. It shows you you. What triggers you reveals what you haven't healed. The monk didn't need the boat to stop bumping into him. He needed to stop assuming there was someone behind the bump. He needed to stop believing his peace was conditional. Surrendering the narrative. When we learn to treat every empty boat with grace, our lives transform. You no longer chase apologies. You no longer demand understanding. You no longer need people to get it for you to move forward. You simply release, not because they deserve peace, but because you do. Imagine if every insult was an empty boat, every betrayal, an empty boat, every rejection, just a current of life, not an attack on your worth. That's not weakness. That's spiritual strength. The lesson. Later that day, the monk returned to his platform. The boat bumped again. He didn't move. He smiled. He watched it drift past as if it had never been a problem to begin with. The real lesson had nothing to do with the boat. It had everything to do with letting go of the belief that life owes you control. Because peace doesn't come when the river is still. Peace comes when you no longer need it to be. In the quiet depths of Zen, there exists a profound riddle that has baffled minds for centuries. It's deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful. It asks one question: what is the sound of one hand clapping? At first, it seems absurd. One hand, after all, can't clap. Clapping, by its very definition, requires two hands to meet. The paradox is obvious, and yet the question itself has stirred countless seekers and thinkers toward deeper understanding. It's not a question meant to be solved in a traditional sense, but a koan, a Zen paradox that isn't about finding a logical answer, but about pointing to a deeper truth that lies beyond the limitations of language and intellect. To understand this koan is to understand a core aspect of Zen philosophy, the power of paradox to awaken deep insight. Paradox in Zen is not something to be rationalized away or explained. It's something to be experienced, something that opens the door to a more profound way of seeing the world. The sound of one hand clapping isn't a riddle to be solved. It's a gateway to awakening. The nature of paradox. In a world that prizes clarity and certainty, paradox is unsettling. We crave answers, we seek resolutions, and we construct our lives around neat, tidy categories. We want to know what is true and what is false, what is right and what is wrong. But Zen invites us to step outside of this dualistic mindset. It challenges us to embrace the mystery, to sit with uncertainty, and to open our hearts to the unanswerable questions. The sound of one hand clapping is a perfect example of this. On the surface, it's a question that doesn't make sense. How can one hand create a sound? It defies the laws of logic. And yet, in the very asking of the question, something profound is happening. The question is pointing to the limitations of our thinking. It's asking us to let go of our need for logical answers and to enter into a space where the mind is free to explore the mystery of existence itself. The power of paradox is that it suspends our usual way of thinking, forcing us to confront the limitations of our understanding. In that suspension, a deeper insight is revealed, not a conclusion, but a shift in perception. We stop trying to solve the problem and instead begin to experience the truth in a way that transcends our logical frameworks. Zen master Hakuin Ikaku, when asked about the sound of one hand clapping, famously replied, "The sound is the sound of your own mind." In this response, Hakuin isn't offering a solution in the traditional sense. He's pointing to something deeper. The sound of one hand clapping isn't an external phenomenon at all, but an inner one. It's the sound of our thoughts, our awareness, our consciousness itself. It's the vibration of the present moment, the awareness that arises when we let go of the need to make sense of everything. Awakening through paradox. When we encounter a paradox like the sound of one hand clapping, we're forced to stop and pay attention. Our minds begin to swirl in confusion, attempting to grasp the question, to resolve it, to find the missing piece. But in doing so, we become aware of something deeper. The mind's constant striving, its need to categorize and label everything. And in that moment of awareness, a shift can happen. This is the purpose of the koan and paradox in Zen practice. To awaken us to the reality that the mind, in its search for certainty, often obscures the deeper truth. The mind wants to know the answer, but the answer is not something that can be grasped. It's something that must be experienced. It's something that must be realized, not thought about. In the case of the sound of one hand clapping, the paradox forces us to let go of our preconceptions about the world and open ourselves to the mystery of existence. When we stop thinking about the question in a conventional way, when we stop trying to solve it with our logical minds, something deeper emerges. We begin to see that the world isn't as simple as our categories would suggest. There's more to reality than we can express with words or concepts. This is why Zen often uses paradox as a tool for awakening. Paradox cuts through the ego's attachment to certainty. It strips away the layers of conditioning that tell us what is possible and what is not. It invites us to enter into a space where the mind can no longer rely on its usual tricks and patterns. And in that space, the deeper truth reveals itself. The role of silence in paradox. One of the most powerful elements of the sound of one hand clapping is its invitation to silence. Silence in Zen is not the absence of sound, but the space in which sound arises. It's the stillness in which all things are revealed. When we ask the question, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" we are not looking for a literal sound. We are looking for the sound that arises from within. We are looking for the sound of silence, the sound that arises when we let go of our need to define, label, or control. In this sense, the sound of one hand clapping is a metaphor for the experience of Zen itself. Zen is not about acquiring knowledge or gaining understanding in the traditional sense. It's about experiencing life directly, without the filter of concepts or judgments. It's about being fully present in the moment, allowing everything to arise without interference from the mind. This is why Zen practitioners often spend so much time in silence. Silence allows us to drop the endless chatter of the mind and connect with the deeper currents of reality. In silence, we encounter the true nature of things, unfiltered and unmediated. The sound of one hand clapping is not something we can analyze or understand with the mind. It is something that can only be heard when we are fully present in the silence of our own being. Paradox as a path to freedom. Paradox also has the power to free us from the tyranny of dualistic thinking. In our everyday lives, we are constantly dividing the world into categories: right and wrong, good and bad, black and white. We build our identities around these dualities, and we measure our worth based on where we fall on the spectrum. But paradox forces us to confront the reality that the world doesn't always fit neatly into these categories. The sound of one hand clapping reminds us that there is no single, definitive way to experience the world. There is no one answer, no one truth. Reality is messy, complex, and full of contradictions. But rather than trying to resolve these contradictions, Zen invites us to embrace them, to hold them in a space of openness and inquiry. The more we let go of our need for certainty, the more freedom we find. The paradoxical nature of Zen also frees us from the confines of our own minds. We are so used to thinking that the mind is the source of all knowledge, that if we think hard enough, we can solve any problem. But Zen shows us that the mind can be just as much a prison as it is a tool. It locks us into rigid patterns of thought and prevents us from seeing the world as it truly is. Paradox breaks down these mental walls. It invites us to step beyond the mind's limitations and experience life directly, in all its raw, unfiltered glory. The sound of one hand clapping is a reminder that we cannot grasp reality with our intellect. We can only experience it in the present moment, free from the need to define or categorize. The paradox of clapping. If we return to the question, what is the sound of one hand clapping? We realize that the answer is both nothing and everything. In a conventional sense, there is no sound, but in a deeper, more profound sense, there is everything: the sound of the universe, the sound of awareness itself, the sound of the present moment. When we stop trying to answer the question with our rational minds, we open ourselves to the possibility that the sound of one hand clapping is not a sound at all. It is the silence that precedes all sound, the space from which all things arise. It is the moment before thought, the moment before words, the moment of pure awareness. The power of paradox lies in its ability to point us beyond the mind, beyond the surface of things, into the depths of reality. The sound of one hand clapping is not something we can understand with our intellect, but it is something we can experience when we let go of the need to control, to categorize, to understand. In the end, the sound of one hand clapping is not a sound. It is the silence that holds all sound. It is the awareness that underlies all experience. It is the space in which life unfolds. And when we encounter it, we are awakened to the truth that all things are interconnected, all things are impermanent, and the world is far more mysterious and beautiful than we can ever comprehend. In the quiet, dusty streets of a small town nestled between the hills, there lived a thief. His name was Rakuta, and he was known far and wide for his cunning, his agility, and his complete disregard for anyone other than himself. He could slip into any home, any shop, and take whatever he wanted without being seen. His eyes gleamed with the thrill of the chase, and his heart beat only for the spoils of his crimes. To him the world was a playground, and the people in it were mere obstacles in the pursuit of his desires. The villagers whispered about Rakuta, calling him a menace, a devil in disguise. They spoke of his thefts, his lies, and the misfortune he brought to those he crossed. He was a shadow in the night, always slipping through their fingers, but leaving behind a trail of misery. No one had ever seen him do a good deed, and no one believed that he could ever change. In their eyes, he was beyond redemption. But one day, everything changed. The encounter with the monk. It was early in the morning when Rakuta decided to sneak into the temple on the edge of the village. The temple, with its ancient stones and weathered wooden doors, was said to house precious relics and scriptures, things of immense value that would fetch a fortune if sold. Rakuta had spent weeks studying the temple, learning the movements of the monks, watching the guards' routines. He knew the place inside and out, and today he would strike. He crept through the gates, silent as a shadow, and made his way toward the main hall. The monks were deep in their morning chants, unaware of the thief creeping among them. Rakuta's fingers twitched with excitement as he reached for a golden bowl, just sitting there on the altar, gleaming in the morning light. But as he touched the bowl, he felt a hand on his shoulder. His heart stopped. He whipped around, ready to strike or flee, but instead he found himself face to face with an old monk, his face soft with kindness, his eyes filled with compassion. The monk did not shout or react with fear. He simply looked at Rakuta with a gentle smile. "Why do you steal, my friend?" the monk asked, his voice calm, as if they were discussing the weather. Rakuta froze. No one had ever spoken to him this way. People in the village feared him, hated him. They saw him as a villain, a monster. But this monk? This old man wasn't scared, and he wasn't angry. He was simply curious. "None of your business," Rakuta snapped, trying to pull away from the monk's grasp. "Is it not my business?" the monk asked, still smiling. "You are taking something that does not belong to you. But what are you really seeking?" Rakuta had no answer. What was he seeking? What was the point of all the thefts, the lies, the deceit? It wasn't about the gold or the riches, at least not entirely. It was something deeper, something that gnawed at him when he was alone, something that never satisfied him, no matter how much he stole. The monk's eyes seemed to pierce through Rakuta's defenses. "You are searching for something, but it is not here in this bowl. It is not in the gold. It is not in the things you take. It is inside you." Rakuta scoffed, trying to pull away again. "I don't need your lectures." But the monk's grip was gentle but firm. "You may not need my words, but you need something, and I am offering you a chance to find it. Come with me. Learn from us. We do not have what you seek in this temple, but perhaps we have something better. Peace. Peace for your heart. The power of compassion." At first, Rakuta laughed at the monk. He had never seen the value in peace. He had never seen the value in anything that couldn't be stolen or conquered. But something in the monk's words lingered in his mind long after the encounter. There was no anger in the monk's eyes, no judgment, only a deep well of compassion. Rakuta couldn't understand it. How could anyone be so kind? How could someone not want to fight back, to defend themselves, to take what was rightfully theirs? And so, over the next few days, Rakuta returned to the temple, watching from the shadows, seeing the monks going about their peaceful routines. He didn't steal anything, though he was tempted. He simply observed, puzzled by the peace that seemed to radiate from them. He saw the monk who had spoken to him, Master Kenji, sitting by the river, meditating quietly, his face serene. One afternoon, Rakuta found himself drawn to the river bank where Master Kenji sat. The monk looked up as Rakuta approached, and without a word he made space for him to sit beside him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sound of the river flowing was all that filled the air. "What do you want from me?" Rakuta finally asked, his voice heavy with suspicion. "I want nothing from you," the monk replied. "I simply offer you a path, but you must choose to walk it." Rakuta's heart twisted in confusion. A path? He had never walked a path of kindness or humility. He had always walked a path of taking, of winning. But as he sat there with the monk, something inside him began to stir. For the first time, he wondered if there could be something more. Master Kenji's voice broke the silence. "I once lived the life you live now. I once stole, lied, and hurt others. But one day I met someone who saw beyond my actions. They didn't see me as a thief, but as a human being who was lost. That is what I offer you now, a chance to be found." Rakuta felt the weight of the words settle on him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was too far gone. "But I'm not like you. I've done terrible things. I don't deserve peace." Master Kenji smiled gently. "It is not for me to decide what you deserve. It is for you to decide who you want to become. Compassion is not given based on what you have done. It is offered because you are human, and we all deserve compassion." The transformation. The days turned into weeks, and Rakuta's heart began to change. Slowly, the monk's teachings began to seep into his soul. At first, he fought against the idea of compassion. It felt foreign, uncomfortable, even weak. But as he spent more time with the monks, meditating, working alongside them, something deep within him began to shift. He started to feel a stirring of something he had never known before, regret for his past actions, a longing for redemption, and a desire to change. One day, as Rakuta walked through the village, he saw a poor widow struggling with a heavy basket of firewood. In the past, he would have simply passed by, indifferent to her plight. But today, something was different. He approached her, took the basket from her shoulders, and offered to carry it for her. "Thank you," the widow said, smiling gratefully. Rakuta was stunned. For the first time in his life, he realized that giving, not taking, brought him a sense of fulfillment. He wasn't sure why, but carrying the basket felt better than any gold he had ever stolen. From that moment on, Rakuta's life began to change. He became a disciple, not because he was forced to, but because he had seen the truth in the monk's words. Compassion, he realized, was the greatest treasure of all. The lesson. The story of Rakuta, the thief who became a disciple, teaches us a profound truth. No one is beyond redemption. Compassion over judgment can transform anyone, no matter how lost they may seem. We are all capable of change, of growth, and of healing. And sometimes it is only through the kindness and understanding of others that we come to see our own worth. Master Kenji did not see Rakuta as a thief. He saw him as a person who was suffering, a person who needed compassion. And in offering that compassion, he gave Rakuta the opportunity to transform, not into someone else, but into the best version of himself. We may encounter people who have done things we deem unforgivable. But in those moments, we must ask ourselves, do we choose judgment or do we choose compassion? When we choose compassion, we create the possibility for change, for healing, and for transformation, not just in others, but in ourselves as well. Rakuta's story is not just the story of a thief who became a disciple. It is the story of how compassion can heal even the most broken hearts, and how, through love and understanding, we can all find our way home. In the heart of a busy town, nestled on the banks of a river that curved lazily around its edges, there lived a man named Haruto. Haruto was a fisherman by trade, but not by nature. He wasn't someone who loved the quiet solitude of the river, nor did he particularly enjoy the daily work of casting nets and hauling fish. But fishing was the family business, and as the eldest son, Haruto had inherited his father's boat and the responsibility that came with it. Each day, Haruto went out on the river, his boat cutting through the water with the sound of a single oar dipping in and out. As he worked, he complained. He complained about the weather, about the fish that were never plentiful enough, and most of all, he complained about the people who lived along the riverbank, watching him with what he felt were judgmental eyes. His life felt like a series of obligations, a long stretch of tedium with no end in sight. Haruto's ego was his constant companion. It was the loud voice in his head that told him he deserved more than this life, more than the endless cycle of fishing, more than the stares from strangers. His ego told him that he was better than the other fishermen, that he was smarter, that he could be doing something more important. But every time he tried to move beyond the river, to seek his fortune elsewhere, he found himself back on the water, rowing again, empty-handed, feeling less than. One morning, as Haruto rowed out into the river, something unusual happened. He felt the boat nudge gently against something. He paused. There, drifting toward him, was another boat. It was an old, weathered thing, with no one in it. Just an empty boat, slowly moving toward his. Haruto scowled. "Who left this here?" he muttered under his breath. "The river is mine. This is my space." He pushed the boat aside roughly, his hands tight on the oar as he returned to his work. But as the day went on, the same thing kept happening. Every time he would row a few meters away, the same empty boat would appear, gently bumping against his own. Each time, it irritated him more. His ego flared up in indignation. How dare anyone encroach upon his territory? How could anyone be so careless, leaving a boat to drift aimlessly like that? The next day, the boat came again, and the day after that. No matter how many times Haruto pushed it away, it would always return. It became a game of frustration for him, a daily ritual of irritation. The more he tried to control the situation, the more the boat seemed to mock him, drifting closer with each passing moment. Finally, one afternoon, as the boat floated toward him once again, Haruto snapped. He jumped to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "Who keeps sending this boat?" he shouted at the river. "Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this?" He jumped out of his own boat, waded into the water, and pulled the empty boat to the shore with force. His hands were trembling, and his chest heaved with the rush of emotions. He stood there for a long time, staring at the empty boat, willing it to disappear, his anger rising like a tidal wave inside of him. "Why is this happening?" he muttered again. "Why is this boat always here?" And then, in a moment of stillness, something unusual happened. Haruto stopped. The wind rustled gently through the trees. The birds continued to chirp. The river flowed quietly around him. The boat, still empty, sat on the shore, unimportant and unthreatening. It was in this moment of silence that Haruto realized the boat was never the problem. The problem was the way he was seeing it. In that moment, Haruto saw that his reaction to the boat, the anger, the frustration, the need to control, was the source of his suffering. He saw that the boat had no intention of disturbing him. It was merely drifting, caught in the current. It wasn't the boat that caused his pain. It was his attachment to the idea that it shouldn't be there. The ego's illusion. Haruto's struggle with the empty boat is not just a story about an inconvenient object bumping into his life. It's a story about the way the ego operates. The ego, in its quest for control, constantly creates conflict where none exists. Haruto's ego told him that the boat was an enemy, something to be rejected, something to be fought. His mind created an adversary out of an innocent object. And in doing so, he lost his peace. In Zen, there is a term called attachment. It refers to our grasping onto things, ideas, or situations that we believe should be a certain way. The ego is the root of all attachment. It insists that life should be as we want it, and when life doesn't conform to our expectations, we suffer. The ego demands control, and when it doesn't get what it wants, it reacts with frustration, anger, or resentment. The ego is never satisfied. It's always hungry for more, always seeking validation, always searching for a reason to feel superior or justified. The ego's nature is to create separation. It divides the world into us and them, right and wrong, desirable and undesirable. And when we live from this place, we are constantly at war with life. But the river, the boat, and the stillness around Haruto are reminders of another way to live, an ego-free existence. The river doesn't fight the boat doesn't fight the river. They simply flow together, moving as one, without attachment, without resistance. Emptiness as peace. After that moment of realization, Haruto sat by the river for hours, watching the boats drift by. He felt no need to control them, no need to push them away. He simply watched without judgment. And in that watching, something began to shift inside of him. He realized that true peace comes not from controlling the circumstances of our lives, but from releasing the need to control them at all. The idea of emptiness is central to Zen. It is not about a void or a lack of substance. It is about freedom, the freedom to let go of the ego's demands, to release attachment, to stop clinging to expectations. Emptiness is the space where peace arises, the space where we are no longer at war with ourselves or the world. The empty boat was a symbol of this emptiness. It had no intention. It carried no agenda. It simply existed, drifting with the current. And in that simplicity, Haruto saw the profound truth of Zen. When we let go of our need to control, to judge, to define everything, we find the peace we've been searching for all along. The lesson, Haruto's journey with the empty boat, teaches us about the destructive power of the ego and the liberating power of emptiness. When we are trapped by our ego, we create conflict where none exists. We react to life's disturbances as if they are personal attacks, when in fact they are just the natural flow of existence. The world is not conspiring against us. It is simply unfolding as it is. True peace is found not in trying to control the river, but in letting it flow. It's not about pushing the boat away, but about accepting it as it is. When we stop attaching meaning to everything, when we stop assigning motives and creating enemies, we open ourselves to the possibility of peace. The ego wants us to believe that we are separate from the world, that we need to defend our territory, protect our sense of self. But emptiness, true emptiness, is the realization that we are not separate. We are not the boat, nor are we the river. We are the space between, still, silent, and free. Haruto's lesson is a reminder that the way to peace is not through control, but through surrender. It is not about making the world conform to our expectations, but about accepting it as it is. When we learn to let go of the ego's grip, we create the space for true peace to arise. And so, Haruto learned the most important lesson of all. The boat is always empty, and so too is the ego. Only when we release the need to fill it do we find peace. In the hills of a quiet village, nestled between the peaks of distant mountains, there lived a young monk named Taiki. His master, a wise old Zen teacher named Master Tetsuo, was known far and wide for his deep understanding of life and the world. People came from all corners of the land to seek his teachings, but Taiki, having just begun his journey as a monk, had much to learn. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Taiki sat in the temple courtyard, gazing at the full moon rising slowly over the mountain ridge. It was one of those rare, perfect moments when everything seemed still and right with the world. The moon cast a soft silver glow on the ground, illuminating the temple garden with a quiet, peaceful light. Master Tetsuo, who had been meditating in silence beside Taiki, suddenly spoke. "Taiki," he said gently, "look at the moon." Taiki's eyes shifted to the moon, the radiant orb hanging high above, its beauty clear and undisturbed. The sight of it filled him with a sense of awe, and for a brief moment the world around him seemed to fade away. "The moon is beautiful, Master," Taiki said softly. "It is a symbol of peace, a reminder of the beauty of the universe." Master Tetsuo smiled. "Yes," he said, "but let me ask you, Taiki, what do you see when you look at the moon?" Taiki thought for a moment. "I see the moon itself," he said. "I see its light and its shape, its majesty in the sky." The master nodded, but did not speak for a while. He simply sat there, his eyes fixed on the moon. Then, after a long silence, he said, "What if I told you that what you are seeing is not the moon at all?" Taiki's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, Master?" "Of course I see the moon. It is right there, hanging in the sky." The Master smiled again, this time with a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Taiki, what you are seeing is only a finger pointing at the moon. You are mistaking the finger for the moon itself." Taiki was confused. "A finger pointing at the moon? I don't understand." Master Tetsuo turned his gaze to the young monk. "Let me explain. The moon is the truth, the ultimate reality. It is the essence of everything, the silent witness to all that is. But you cannot touch the moon directly. It is too vast, too distant, too intangible. So we use symbols, methods, and teachings to point us in the right direction. These are the fingers that guide us to the moon." Taiki listened carefully, but still the concept seemed distant to him. "So, the moon is the truth, and the finger is the method of pointing toward it?" "Yes," the Master said. "But remember, Taiki, the finger is not the truth itself. It is merely a pointer, a guide. The moon is the truth, but if you focus only on the finger, on the symbol, on the method, you will miss the truth altogether. The finger may be necessary to show the way, but it is not the destination." Taiki's eyes widened as the meaning of the Master's words began to sink in. He had spent so much of his life studying the methods, the rituals, and the teachings of the Zen tradition. He had been fixated on understanding the right way to sit, to breathe, to meditate. He had been so focused on the practices themselves that he had lost sight of the true essence of those practices, the truth they were pointing to. Master Tetsuo noticed Taiki's growing understanding and continued, "People often make the mistake of worshiping the finger, Taiki. They become so attached to the method, the ritual, the symbol, that they forget what it is pointing to. They get caught up in the structure, the form, and the rules, without ever experiencing the truth itself." "But why do we need the finger at all?" Taiki asked. "Why not go straight to the moon?" "Ah," said the Master, "because without the finger you would never know where to look. The finger is necessary. It points the way. It guides you. But once you have found the truth, once you have touched the moon, you must let go of the finger. You must stop clinging to the method and embrace the essence of what it points to." Taiki nodded slowly, beginning to grasp the deeper meaning of the lesson. He had been so focused on the outward forms of his practice, on the perfection of his meditation posture, on the correctness of his breathing, on following the prescribed rituals, that he had forgotten the point of all of it, to experience the true nature of reality, to reach the moon itself. Master Tetsuo's voice softened as he spoke once more. "The danger, Taiki, is that once you become attached to the finger, you may spend your entire life staring at it, thinking it is the truth. You may perfect the form, the practice, the ritual, but if you are not careful, you will never experience the moon. The truth is not in the finger. It is in the space beyond it. It is in the stillness, the emptiness, the presence that can never be captured by a method or symbol." The danger of attachment to method. This lesson is one of the most fundamental teachings in Zen, the danger of becoming attached to the method, to the symbol, to the form. Whether it's meditation, chanting, or any other spiritual practice, these methods are merely tools to help us reach a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. But they are not the destination. They are the finger pointing at the moon. In our everyday lives, we can easily fall into the trap of becoming overly attached to symbols and methods. We worship the tools we use to try and understand life, forgetting that the tools themselves are not the essence of life. The real understanding comes when we look beyond the tool, beyond the method, and allow ourselves to experience the truth directly. Think of how people sometimes become obsessed with their diet or workout routine. They believe that following a particular method will bring them happiness or fulfillment. The method becomes the goal, and they lose sight of the larger purpose: health, vitality, and inner peace. They become so focused on the finger the routine, the diet, that they miss the moon, the true essence of a balanced, healthy life. The essence of truth. The moon is not a fixed object in the sky. It changes every day, waxing and waning, depending on the cycles of the universe. In the same way, truth is not a fixed idea or concept. It is ever-changing, ever-evolving, a dynamic force that cannot be captured by any one symbol or method. We often mistake our perception of the truth for the truth itself. We think that the method or the ritual will lead us to the ultimate answer, but in reality, the method is just a temporary guide. The truth is not something we can grasp or hold on to. It is something we must experience directly, beyond words, beyond concepts. True understanding comes when we stop clinging to the symbols and methods and allow ourselves to experience life in its purest form. This doesn't mean that the methods are unimportant. On the contrary, they are necessary. They help us get to the moon. They point us in the right direction. But once we arrive, we must let go of the finger and embrace the truth itself. The finger and the moon. In daily life. In everyday life, the finger and the moon appear in many forms. Every time we get caught up in the surface of things, the appearance of a situation, the way we think things should be, we are focusing on the finger. We might obsess over how things look on the outside, how they conform to our expectations, without ever truly understanding what is beneath the surface. The truth is often hidden in plain sight. It is not in the form, but in the essence. The challenge is to look beyond the symbol, beyond the method, and see the truth for what it is. The moon is always there, shining in the sky, waiting for us to look up and see it. Master Tetsuo's teaching to Taiki was a reminder that the way to true understanding is not through the rigid pursuit of methods or symbols. It is through letting go, through seeing beyond the surface, through experiencing life directly, without clinging to the finger that points the way. As Taiki sat there with his master, staring at the moon, he finally understood. The finger was important, but it was not the truth. The truth was in the experience, in the moment of seeing, in the space beyond the symbol. The moon, like the truth, is not something we can possess. It is something we can only witness, experience, and embrace. And in that embrace, we find peace. In the end, Taiki understood that the true wisdom of Zen was not in the methods or the rituals, but in the freedom to let go of them and see the world as it truly is. And in that seeing, the moon would always be there, shining bright. There is a famous Zen saying that goes, "The gate is without a gate." For those unacquainted with Zen teachings, this may sound like nonsense or an enigma. A gate, after all, is a literal object, something that can be opened or closed, something that provides access or restricts entry. How can a gate be without a gate? How can something that is, by definition, a barrier, have no barrier at all? But Zen, like life, often speaks in paradoxes. And like any profound teaching, the truth lies not in the surface meaning, but in the deeper layers that lie beneath the words. In this story, we will follow a young monk named Ryota, who is about to learn an essential lesson on this concept of the gate without a gate, and what it truly means to be free. Ryota had been studying with Master Jin, a revered Zen master known for his ability to guide students through the most profound and difficult of teachings. Master Jin was a man of few words, and when he did speak, his words were often cryptic, layered with meaning that could take years to fully comprehend. Ryota had been under his guidance for several years, and while he had gained some understanding of Zen practice, something still eluded him. He was seeking something, but he could not put his finger on it. One day, after meditation, Master Jin called Ryota to the courtyard. The old monk stood silently, gazing at the distant horizon, his hands resting in his sleeves. Ryota approached, kneeling before him, and waited for him to speak. "You seek the way, do you not?" Master Jin asked without turning. "Yes, Master," Ryota replied. "I seek the truth, the path to enlightenment." Master Jin nodded slowly. "Then you must pass through the gate." "The gate?" Ryota asked, puzzled. "What gate is that, Master?" Master Jin turned to him and pointed to the small wooden gate that led into the garden. "That is the gate," he said. "If you wish to pass beyond the limitations of your mind, you must pass through it." Ryota looked at the gate, which appeared as simple and unremarkable as any other. It was nothing more than a weathered frame with wooden slats, standing in quiet stillness against the backdrop of the garden. "I understand," Ryota said. "I must meditate, study, and follow the path. I must walk through this gate to reach enlightenment." Master Jin smiled, but it was a knowing smile. "Ah, Ryota," he said, "there is something you do not yet understand. The gate you see is not the true gate." Ryota blinked in confusion. "Not the true gate? But, Master, this is the gate that leads to the garden. This is the gate I must pass through." Master Jin walked toward the gate, his footsteps quiet on the gravel. He reached out and touched the wooden frame, his fingers brushing lightly against it. "This is not the gate," he said. "It is merely a symbol, a physical manifestation. It is a representation of the idea of a gate. But the true gate lies elsewhere, within you." Ryota's brow furrowed. "Within me?" he repeated. "But I do not understand, Master. How can the gate be within me?" Master Jin turned to him and looked deep into his eyes. "The gate you see before you is a symbol, an illusion. You think that enlightenment, the truth, lies on the other side of it. But in truth there is no gate, there is no barrier, there is no separation between you and the truth. The gate is an illusion you have created in your mind." Ryota's heart raced. "But if there is no gate, then how can I pass through it? How can I reach the truth?" Master Jin smiled gently. "That, Ryota, is the heart of the matter. The gate is not something you need to pass through. It is something you must realize does not exist. Enlightenment is not a destination. It is the realization that there is no barrier. There is no gate to pass through. There is only the present moment, the truth that has always been here, waiting for you to see it." The illusion of separation. In the world of Zen, the concept of the gate without a gate points directly to the illusory nature of our perception of reality. We see barriers, limitations, and obstacles in our minds, but these are often constructs of the ego, the mind that constantly creates separation. We believe that enlightenment or truth is something we must reach, something outside of ourselves that we must attain. But in reality, it is not a destination. It is a realization. The ego works tirelessly to build walls, to create separations between the self and the world, between the individual and the universe. We create gates where there are none, barriers where there is only openness. The mind imposes these limits on us, and we become convinced that we must struggle to break through them. But what if the barriers don't exist at all? What if the only thing keeping us from experiencing the truth is our belief in the separation, our attachment to the idea that there is a gate we must pass through? In Zen, this idea is expressed in the concept of no barriers. The true realization of enlightenment is not found by striving to reach some distant goal. It is found in the direct experience of the present moment, the understanding that there is no other side to cross. The truth is here always. It has never been hidden behind a gate, and there is no place you must go to find it. The mind's need for a gate. The mind, however, is deeply conditioned to seek out obstacles. It constantly seeks ways to define and separate, to label and categorize. This tendency to create barriers is not inherently bad. It is simply the nature of the mind to structure reality. But when we attach ourselves to these structures, when we confuse them for reality, we become trapped in the illusion of separation. Enlightenment in this context is not a state of mind to be attained, but a state of mind to be released. It is the letting go of the idea that there is something to achieve. When we stop chasing the goal, when we stop looking for the gate, we realize that there was never anything in our way. The true nature of the gate. Ryota sat down under the old pine tree in the garden, pondering Master Jin's words. He looked at the gate, but now it seemed different to him. It was no longer a symbol of separation or a barrier to cross. It was simply a gate, as it had always been, but without any significance beyond its physical form. Master Jin approached him and sat beside him. "Do you understand, Ryota?" he asked. Ryota closed his eyes and breathed deeply. "Yes, Master, I understand now. The gate was never real. It was something my mind created. I thought there was something to pass through, something to overcome. But there was nothing to overcome, nothing to pass through. It was always here, within me, without a gate." Master Jin nodded, pleased with his student's insight. "Yes, Ryota, enlightenment is not a destination, and there is no gate to pass through. The truth is not something you seek outside of yourself. It is realized when you stop looking for it. It is already here, in this moment, in the simplicity of just being." Ryota smiled, a deep peace settling in his heart. For the first time, he understood that the truth was not something to be found. It was something to be realized, right here, right now. The gate, the barrier, had never existed. It had only been an illusion in his mind. Master Jin's teaching was simple, but it held a profound truth. The key to enlightenment is not in striving or seeking. It is in realizing that there is nothing to strive for. There is no gate to cross, no barrier to overcome. There is only the present moment, and in that moment, all is already whole. The freedom of no barriers. The idea of the gate without a gate teaches us that freedom is not something we need to attain. It is something we realize when we stop seeing barriers where there are none. It is not a destination, but a realization that we have always been free, always been whole. When we let go of the need to control, to categorize, to chase after something we think is outside of ourselves, we realize that there is no separation, there is no gate. The only thing that keeps us from the truth is our belief in the barriers we've created in our own minds. When we let go of these mental constructs, we see the truth as it is, simple, present, and already here. Enlightenment is not about achieving something. It's about realizing that you are already what you've been seeking all along. There is no gate to pass through. There is only the present moment, and in that moment you are already whole, already free. The gate without a gate, what a profound realization this is. The truth, it turns out, was never hidden. It has always been right here, waiting for you to see it. And in seeing it, you pass through the gate, without ever needing to cross it. There is a story that is often told in Zen circles about a monk named Tenzin who was known for his strict discipline and unwavering focus. Tenzin's life was one of rigid structure, where every moment was meticulously planned, every action measured. He was the model of a Zen disciple, always working, always striving, never yielding. His mind was like an unshakable mountain, steady and resolute. However, despite his apparent strength, Tenzin's life was filled with inner turmoil. There was a constant tension in his chest, a feeling that something was missing, that something was incomplete. No matter how much he meditated, how much he followed the teachings, he could not seem to find peace. He was trapped in the cycle of always seeking, always striving, never being able to truly surrender. One day, while walking through the temple garden, Tenzin came across Master Aiko, the elderly monk who had been the head of the monastery for many years. Master Aiko was sitting under a tree, gazing peacefully at the clouds drifting across the sky. Tenzin, feeling a sense of urgency, approached him with a question that had been plaguing his mind for years. "Master Aiko," he said, "I have been practicing diligently, following the teachings, yet I still feel restless. My mind is always in motion, always striving, always grasping. How can I find peace?" Master Aiko smiled gently and patted the ground beside him. "Sit with me, Tenzin," he said, "and let me show you something." Tenzin sat down beside the master, eager to learn the secret to peace. Master Aiko reached into the folds of his robe and pulled out a small stone. It was smooth and round, worn down by years of weathering. he handed it to Tenzin. "Hold the stone," Master Aiko instructed. Tenzin took the stone in his hand and stared at it for a moment, wondering what lesson the master was about to impart. "Now," said Master Aiko, "I want you to hold on to this stone with all your might. Hold it tightly and do not let go." Tenzin followed the instruction, gripping the stone with all his strength. His knuckles turned white as he clutched it, his hand trembling slightly under the strain. He held the stone for a minute, then two, and soon the tension in his hand began to intensify. The stone grew heavy, and his fingers began to ache. But Master Aiko did not speak. He simply watched, a calm presence beside him. After what felt like an eternity, Tenzin could no longer bear the discomfort. He released his grip on the stone and looked at Master Aiko, a mixture of frustration and confusion on his face. "Master," Tenzin said, "the stone has become unbearable. My hand hurts and I can feel the tension building. Why did you ask me to hold on to it for so long?" Master Aiko smiled softly. "This stone is like your mind, Tenzin. You grip onto things in life, the past, the future, your desires, your fears, with all your strength. You hold on to them so tightly that they begin to hurt you, to weigh you down. The more you try to control, the more you struggle, the more your life becomes filled with tension." Tenzin listened intently, his mind slowly beginning to grasp the meaning behind Master Aiko's words. "True peace," Master Aiko continued, "does not come from holding on. It comes from learning to let go, to release the grip you have on everything, the stone, your expectations, your attachments. Only then can you experience true freedom." The grip of attachment. The story of Tenzin and the stone is a powerful metaphor for the way we hold on to things in life. We grasp onto our past experiences, our regrets, our fears, and our desires with such intensity that we begin to believe we are defined by them. We try to control everything, the way others perceive us, the outcomes of our actions, the flow of our lives. But in doing so, we create a barrier between ourselves and true peace. Attachment is a powerful force in our lives. It is what keeps us tied to our ego, to our identities, and to the endless cycle of striving and seeking. We think that by holding on to things, we can control them, shape them to our will. But in reality, the more we hold on, the more we suffer. The tension of attachment is like a stone we grip too tightly, heavy, painful, and ultimately unyielding. The true lesson of Zen is not about striving harder or pushing more forcefully. It is about the opposite, learning to let go. This is the essence of surrender. It is the recognition that we are not in control, and that true freedom comes when we stop trying to control everything around us. The art of surrender. Surrendering does not mean giving up. It does not mean abandoning your goals or letting life pass you by. Instead, it is the ability to release the need to control the outcomes, to let go of your attachment to specific results. It is the act of trusting that life will unfold as it is meant to, without your interference. Surrendering is a paradox. In letting go, we find strength. In releasing our grip, we find freedom. By surrendering our need for control, we open ourselves to the flow of life, to the present moment, and to the peace that comes with acceptance. This is not easy. Our minds are conditioned to seek control. We are taught from an early age to fight for what we want, to strive for success, and to never let go. But Zen teaches us that the greatest strength comes not from holding on, but from releasing. The freedom of letting go. True freedom lies in the ability to let go of what no longer serves us, whether that is a belief, an attachment, a fear, or a relationship. By holding on to these things, we remain trapped in a cycle of suffering. But when we learn to release them, we create space for peace, for clarity, and for a deeper connection with ourselves and the world around us. Letting go is not a passive act. It is an active decision to trust the process of life, to allow things to unfold naturally. It is the ability to step back and observe without interference, to embrace the flow of existence without trying to direct it. It is the art of surrender, surrendering the need for control, surrendering the ego and surrendering the belief that we can ever truly grasp the full picture of life. The present moment. One of the greatest gifts of learning to let go is the ability to fully experience the present moment. When we release our attachments to the past and the future, we free ourselves from the constant noise of regret and worry. We allow ourselves to simply be, to exist in the here and now, where true peace resides. In the present moment, there is no need to control. There is no need to grasp. There is only the experience of life as it is, raw, unfiltered, and beautiful in its impermanence. Letting go allows us to live more fully, more authentically, and with greater ease. The path to freedom. As Tenzin sat with Master Aiko in the garden, he began to understand the profound nature of surrender. It was not about abandoning his discipline or his practice, but about releasing the need to control everything. It was about accepting that life is not something to be controlled. It is something to be experienced. Tenzin closed his eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time, he felt a sense of ease in his body, a lightness that had been absent for so long. The weight of the stone had lifted, and he was free. Master Aiko, sensing his student's shift in understanding, spoke once more. You will never find peace by forcing it. It is not something to be achieved, but something to be realized when you stop struggling. The art of surrender is the key to true freedom. Tenzin smiled, a gentle understanding settling in his heart. He had learned that true peace comes not from effort, but from release. The more we let go, the more we free ourselves to experience the beauty of life as it is, unfolding in its own time, beyond our control. And in that release, we find the freedom to be who we truly are. There is a story in Zen that often leaves its listeners in a state of deep contemplation, a story that speaks volumes without saying a single word. It is the tale of a young, eager disciple named Jin who sought enlightenment under the tutelage of the great Zen master, Hoshin. Jin was a gifted student, quick-witted and eager to learn. He spent years in the monastery, following every instruction with precision. Every day he meditated for hours, performed his duties with the utmost discipline, and absorbed the teachings of the master like a sponge soaking in water. But no matter how hard he tried, no matter how much he practiced, enlightenment seemed to elude him. His mind remained restless, constantly searching for that final key to unlocking the mysteries of life. One morning, after years of study and striving, Jin could bear it no longer. He had reached the end of his patience and his endurance. He approached Master Hoshin, his face filled with frustration. "Master," Jin said, "I have studied for years, meditated endlessly, and followed your teachings to the letter. But I still feel no closer to enlightenment. My mind is clouded, and I am filled with doubt. Please, tell me what I am missing. What is the final piece I need to awaken?" Master Hoshin, who had been silent for many years, looked at Jin without speaking. His eyes were calm, steady, and unblinking, like a still pond reflecting the sky. The silence between them stretched on, thick and suffocating. Jin's heart pounded in his chest as the weight of the master's gaze pressed down on him. I don't understand," Jin finally said, his voice trembling with confusion and frustration. "Why won't you answer me? I have come to you with all my questions, with all my seeking, and yet you say nothing. Why are you silent?" Master Hoshin's expression remained unchanged, his silence as profound as the depths of the ocean. After what seemed like an eternity, he stood up slowly and motioned for Jin to follow him. The two walked in silence through the monastery gardens, their footsteps the only sound that broke the stillness. They came to a small, peaceful pond, the water rippling gently under the touch of the wind. Master Hoshin stood by the edge of the pond, staring out over the water, his face serene. Jin stood beside him, his mind racing, but still no words came from the master. He was left alone with his thoughts, his frustrations, his confusion. "Master, please," Jin said once more, his voice cracking with desperation. "Tell me what I need to do. Why is your silence so heavy? What is it that you want me to learn?" Master Hoshin finally turned his gaze toward Jin. His eyes met Jin's with a quiet intensity that spoke volumes without a single word. And then, without any further explanation, Master Hoshin took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and pointed to the pond. Jin looked into the water. It was clear and still, reflecting the sky above. But as he gazed deeper, he began to notice something, a small ripple in the water, expanding outward from the center of the pond. The ripple disturbed the surface, making the once perfect reflection blur and distort. Jin's eyes widened as he watched the ripple grow, spreading out in circles, reaching farther and farther across the pond. Master Hoshin remained silent, watching Jin with quiet patience. And as Jin continued to observe the ripple, something deep inside him shifted. The image in the water no longer seemed like a mirror of the sky above. It was simply water, moving in response to forces beyond its control. And in that moment, Jin understood. The ripple was not an external force. It was a reflection of his own mind, disturbed, restless, and constantly in motion. For years he had been like the pond's surface, constantly striving, constantly reacting to the world around him, creating ripples that distorted his perception of reality. He had been trying to grasp at the stillness of the pond, but he had failed to realize that the stillness was not something that could be forced or attained. It was something that arose naturally when the ripples ceased, when the mind stopped its ceaseless striving. The silence of the Master was the teaching. The power of silence. In our world of constant noise, where information bombards us at every moment, silence is often perceived as empty, as though it holds no value. We are conditioned to believe that answers must come in the form of words, explanations, and solutions. But Zen teaches us that sometimes silence is the most profound answer of all. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the absence of interference. It is the space where true understanding can emerge, free from the noise of the mind and the distractions of the world. In silence, there is no need to grasp or control. There is only presence. It is in this space that clarity arises, where we can see things as they are, without the distortion of our desires, fears, and judgments. Master Hoshin's silence was not an absence of wisdom, but a deep invitation to Jin to look beyond his seeking, beyond his striving. It was a call to stop searching outside of himself and to find the answers within. The ripples in the pond were his own restless thoughts, and the stillness of the water was the clarity that could arise once those thoughts settled. The wisdom of not knowing. Often we seek knowledge as if it is something to be acquired, something external that can be obtained through study, practice, or experience. But true wisdom, Zen teaches us, is not about accumulating knowledge. It is about letting go of what we think we know and surrendering to the unknown. It is about releasing our attachment to answers and embracing the mystery of life. Master Hoshin's silence was not an invitation to passivity. It was an invitation to engage with life directly, without the filter of preconceived notions. Silence is a powerful teaching because it forces us to face the unknown, to sit with our questions and discomforts, and to trust that the answers will arise in their own time. We often think that we must have all the answers, that we must know the way forward. But true wisdom lies in the ability to not know. It is in the not knowing that we open ourselves to the present moment, to the flow of life, and to the deeper truths that cannot be grasped with the intellect. The teachings of silence. In practice, Master Hoshin's silence was not simply a passive act. It was a skillful means of teaching. By remaining silent, the Master forced Jin to confront his own mind, to see the agitation that was clouding his perception. The silence created space for Jin to let go of his need for answers and to experience the present moment without interference. In our own lives, we can practice the art of silence in small ways. When we are overwhelmed by the noise of the world, we can take a moment to sit in silence and allow our minds to settle. We can learn to listen deeply to the silence between words, to the space between thoughts. In these moments, we may find that the answers we seek are not found in what we say, but in what we allow ourselves to experience. Silence is a practice of presence. It is the ability to be with what is, without trying to change or fix it. It is in silence that we can fully connect with ourselves and the world around us, free from the distractions of the mind and the constant push for control. The Master's silence and the ripple of awareness. As Jin continued to watch the ripples in the pond, he began to see the connection between his own mind and the water before him. The ripples were not something to be resisted or forced away. They were simply a natural occurrence. In the same way, his restless thoughts were not something to fight against, but something to observe with equanimity. Jin's breakthrough came not from an intellectual understanding, but from the direct experience of silence. In that moment of stillness, he understood that enlightenment was not a distant goal to be attained, but a realization that could arise when the mind stopped striving and the ripples of attachment and desire ceased. Master Hoshin's silence had led Jin to the realization that true peace comes not from seeking answers, but from sitting with the unknown and allowing it to reveal itself. It was a lesson that could not be taught with words, but only through experience. In the end, the Master's silence spoke louder than any words ever could. It was a teaching that transcended language, a teaching that could only be understood in the quiet depths of the soul. And as Jin stood there, gazing at the still pond, he knew that he had finally found the peace he had been searching for. Not through striving, not through seeking, but through the simple act of letting go. In the world of Zen, the quest for enlightenment is often portrayed as a transcendent, mystical journey. It is about seeing beyond the illusions of the world, diving deep into the mysteries of existence, and experiencing moments of profound insight that shake the very foundation of reality. But there is a deeper, quieter truth embedded within Zen teachings that is often overlooked. Enlightenment is not found in the extraordinary, but in the ordinary, in the mundane tasks of daily life. There is a story that illustrates this idea perfectly. It is the story of a young monk who was just beginning his training under a revered master. The monk was full of enthusiasm and ambition, eager to reach enlightenment as quickly as possible. He had read all the sacred texts, practiced countless meditations, and taken on the discipline of the monastic life with fervor. His mind was set on attaining the highest wisdom, on breaking free from the cycle of suffering, and on achieving the perfect state of mind. One day he approached his master with a burning question. "Master," the monk said, "I have practiced diligently and studied deeply. I wish to understand the highest truth, the secret of enlightenment. How can I achieve it?" The master, a man of few words, smiled gently and pointed to a small wooden stool beside him. "Chop wood, carry water," he said. The monk was confused. "What does that mean? How can I attain enlightenment by chopping wood and carrying water? These are mere tasks of daily life. They have no connection to spiritual realization." The master looked at him with steady, compassionate eyes. "When you are chopping wood, chop wood. When you are carrying water, carry water." The monk still did not understand. He had been expecting some profound secret, some great revelation, but the answer seemed so simple, so ordinary. But he trusted his master and decided to follow his instructions, though with some hesitation. Days passed, and the monk found himself chopping wood and carrying water without much thought. At first, he resented these tasks. They felt beneath him as if they were a waste of time that could be better spent in meditation or study. But as the days went on, he began to notice something subtle, something unexpected. As he chopped the wood, he found his mind beginning to quiet. The rhythmic motion of the axe cutting into the log became a kind of meditation. With each swing, his thoughts began to slow down, his anxieties melting away. He became absorbed in the process, in the feel of the axe in his hands, in the sound of it striking the wood. He realized that in that moment there was no separation between himself and the task. He was simply present, fully engaged with the work at hand. Similarly, when he carried water, he began to experience the same sense of mindfulness. The weight of the bucket, the steady rhythm of his steps, the sound of water sloshing gently in the container, each moment was alive, vivid, and complete in itself. He was no longer thinking about enlightenment, about escaping from the mundane. He was simply carrying water, and in that act, he was fully alive, fully aware. The monk began to understand the master's lesson. Enlightenment was not a distant goal to be attained through grand gestures or extraordinary experiences. It was not about transcending the world, but about being fully present in it. Enlightenment was in the ordinary, in the simple everyday tasks that we often overlook or take for granted. The illusion of specialness. We live in a culture that glorifies the extraordinary, the exceptional, the miraculous. We are constantly told that success, fulfillment, and happiness can only be found in the big moments, the career achievements, the breakthroughs, the dramatic changes in our lives. We are encouraged to chase after the next big thing, the next great adventure, the next transformation. We look for meaning in the extraordinary because we believe that only the extraordinary can hold value or significance. But Zen teaches us that the extraordinary is an illusion. It is not the big moments that define our lives, but the small, ordinary ones. In fact, it is often in our search for the extraordinary that we miss the true beauty of the present moment. The search for something special, something profound, blinds us to the miracles that are already all around us. The act of chopping wood or carrying water may seem mundane, but it is in these moments that we can find the deepest wisdom. When we are fully present in the task, when we are not distracted by the past or the future, we discover that life itself is extraordinary. It is not the task that matters, but the awareness we bring to it. Each moment is a doorway to insight if we are willing to step through it. Mindfulness in everyday life. Zen teaches us that mindfulness is not a practice reserved for meditation or retreat. It is a way of being in the world, a way of engaging with life, moment by moment. Mindfulness is not about escaping from the ordinary, but about seeing it with new eyes, with a deep appreciation for the present moment. When we practice mindfulness in the simplest tasks, whether it is chopping wood, washing dishes, or brushing our teeth, we begin to realize that these activities are not separate from our spiritual practice. They are our practice. They are opportunities to cultivate presence, to quiet the mind, and to open our hearts. The monk who chopped wood and carried water was not trying to achieve anything. He was simply doing the work in front of him with full attention and presence. And in doing so, he discovered that enlightenment was not a distant future state, but something that was available in every moment, in every task, in every breath. The Zen of everyday tasks. There is a Zen saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." This saying speaks to the core of Zen practice. It suggests that the work we do in our daily lives is not something to be transcended or escaped from. It is the path itself. Enlightenment is not a lofty state to be reached in the future. It is a realization of the present moment, right here, right now. It is not something we attain through special experiences, but through living each moment with full awareness and presence. In Zen, the mundane is sacred. There is no distinction between the sacred and the ordinary. Everything is an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to awaken to the truth of our existence. Whether we are sweeping the floor, cooking a meal, or folding laundry, these tasks are the very stuff of enlightenment. The more we are able to bring our full attention to the ordinary, the more we deepen our understanding of the extraordinary nature of life. Living with presence. The lesson of chopping wood and carrying water is a call to bring presence to all aspects of our lives. It is an invitation to stop waiting for something big to happen and to start fully engaging with the life that is unfolding before us right now. There is no need to seek enlightenment in distant mountains or exotic lands. It is right here in the tasks of daily life. When we begin to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, when we start to appreciate the beauty in the simplest moments, we begin to awaken. We stop chasing after the next big thing, and we start living fully in the moment. We stop striving for enlightenment as if it were something outside of ourselves, and we start recognizing that it is already here, in the very act of living. Enlightenment is not about escaping the world or transcending it. It is about embracing it fully, with all its messiness and imperfection, and finding peace in the midst of it. It is about realizing that every moment, no matter how small or ordinary, is a gift. Every act, no matter how simple, is an opportunity to practice presence. The wisdom of the ordinary. As the monk continued to chop wood and carry water, he began to experience a profound sense of peace. He realized that the search for enlightenment was a distraction, that it was the act of being present in the moment that allowed him to experience the deepest wisdom. There was no need for grand gestures, no need for miraculous events. The true miracle was in the ordinary, in the everyday tasks that we so often overlook. In the end, the monk found that enlightenment was not a goal to be reached, but a way of being in the world. It was the ability to see the sacredness in the ordinary, to find peace in the simple act of living. And as he chopped wood and carried water, he knew that he was already home. In the heart of a Zen monastery, there is a simple yet profound role: the tenzo. The tenzo is the cook, the one entrusted with preparing the meals for the entire community. To many, this may seem like an ordinary task, a job that simply fills the stomachs of those who practice. But in Zen, nothing is ordinary. Every act, no matter how simple, is an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to awaken, and to cultivate a deep sense of devotion. There is a story that speaks to the heart of this idea. It is the story of a young novice who was assigned the role of the tenzo. He had just entered the monastery, filled with youthful energy and idealistic dreams of spiritual attainment. He had visions of sitting in meditation for hours, contemplating profound truths, and perhaps having an experience of enlightenment. But instead, his master gave him the humble task of cooking rice for the community. At first, the novice was disappointed. He had imagined himself studying sacred texts, engaging in deep meditations, and perhaps learning a secret or two from his master. But instead, he found himself in the kitchen, washing rice, boiling water, and stirring the pot. "Master," the novice said one evening after days of cooking, "I came here to practice Zen. I want to understand the deepest truths of existence. Why must I spend my time cooking rice?" The master, wise and compassionate, looked at him and smiled. "Ah, but you are already practicing Zen. Every grain of rice you prepare is a step toward enlightenment. Every motion, every moment of attention you give to the task is a part of the practice. The rice you cook is not separate from the truth you seek. In fact, it is the truth itself." The novice was puzzled. But how can cooking rice be the same as meditation or contemplation? It seems so trivial. The master nodded gently. The act of cooking rice, when done with full attention, is no different from the act of sitting in meditation. Both are forms of devotion. Both are ways of being fully present in the moment. The key is in how you do it. The devotion of the tenzo. In Zen, every task is an opportunity for practice, and devotion is not limited to grand gestures or religious rituals. Devotion is found in the smallest of actions, in the care and attention we bring to every moment of our lives. It is in the act of washing the rice, in the careful monitoring of the water, in the patience required to ensure the rice is cooked just right. The tenzo's work is an act of mindfulness. It requires full presence, full attention to detail, and a deep respect for the ingredients. The rice, the water, the fire. They are all part of the same interconnected whole. To cook rice with devotion is to recognize the sacredness of life in all its forms, no matter how humble. The novice soon realized that cooking rice was not just about preparing food. It was a meditation in action. As he washed the grains, he paid attention to the sensation of the water running over them. As he stirred the pot, he focused on the movement of his hands. As he watched the rice cook, he allowed his mind to become as still and clear as the water in the pot. The task became a form of moving meditation, a practice of being fully engaged in the present moment. The act of cooking rice became a path to awakening, not because of the rice itself, but because of the way the novice approached it. Each moment in the kitchen was a moment to practice patience, to cultivate mindfulness, and to deepen his understanding of the nature of reality. The novice learned that every moment, no matter how seemingly insignificant, is an opportunity to awaken to the present moment. The power of mindful action. In the Zen tradition, mindfulness is not just about sitting still and focusing the mind in meditation. It is about bringing the same level of attention and devotion to every action, no matter how mundane. Whether we are sweeping the floor, washing the dishes, or cooking a meal, each task is an opportunity to practice mindfulness. And in that mindfulness, we find the path to awakening. The novice's journey as the Tenzo taught him that devotion is not about how we think of ourselves or how others view us, but about the quality of attention we bring to our actions. It is about doing the work before us with full presence, without distraction, and without judgment. When we bring this level of attention to everything we do, from the most ordinary tasks to the most profound spiritual practices, we begin to see the world as it truly is, sacred, interconnected, and full of life. The simple act of cooking rice became a profound teaching. It showed the novice that enlightenment was not something to be sought in distant places or abstract concepts, but something that was already present in his life, in the very work he was doing. The rice was not separate from the truth. It was a part of it. And by being fully present with the rice, the novice was able to touch the essence of reality itself. Devotion in the ordinary. One of the key teachings of Zen is that enlightenment is not found in special or extraordinary moments, but in the ordinary. The moment we recognize the sacredness of the present moment, we begin to see the world differently. We begin to realize that there is no distinction between the sacred and the mundane. Every action, no matter how small, is an opportunity to practice mindfulness and to awaken. This is where the power of devotion comes in. Devotion is not about worshiping something outside of ourselves. It is about dedicating ourselves fully to the task at hand, to the present moment, to the work of life. When we do this, we bring a sense of sacredness to everything we do. Whether we are cooking rice, folding laundry, or taking a walk in nature, these tasks become opportunities to connect with the present moment, to cultivate mindfulness, and to awaken to the truth of who we are. In Zen, there is no division between the sacred and the mundane. Every moment is an opportunity to practice. Every task is a form of meditation. The key is in how we approach it. When we approach every task with devotion and presence, we begin to see the world as it truly is, full of potential, full of life, and full of grace. The devotion of the Tenzo and the path to awakening. The novice's journey as the Tenzo ultimately transformed his understanding of Zen. He learned that devotion is not about what we do, but how we do it. It is about bringing our full attention to the present moment, without judgment, without distraction, and without expectation. It is about surrendering to the task at hand and recognizing that each moment is an opportunity to practice mindfulness and to awaken to the truth of who we are. The rice the novice cooked was not just food for the body, it was food for the soul. Each grain, each moment spent, washing, stirring, and cooking was an opportunity to connect with the present moment, to see the sacredness of life, and to cultivate the qualities of patience, attention, and presence. The novice discovered that enlightenment is not about seeking something beyond ourselves. It is about recognizing the beauty and the truth in the present moment, in the ordinary tasks of life. The work of the Tenzo became a path to awakening because the novice learned to approach it with devotion, with mindfulness, and with full presence. In doing so, he discovered that the path to enlightenment is not found in extraordinary moments, but in the ordinary. It is found in the way we approach every task, no matter how small or humble. And in that approach, we find the awakening we seek. In the end, the novice understood that the true path to enlightenment is not about seeking something special or extraordinary, but about being fully present in the ordinary moments of life. It is about bringing devotion and mindfulness to every action, and recognizing that the sacredness of life is already present in the work we do. Whether we are cooking rice or sitting in meditation, the key is the same: full presence, full attention, and full devotion to the task at hand. In a remote Zen temple, nestled among the mountains, there was an ancient bell. It stood tall in the center of the courtyard, its surface smooth from years of use, its deep tone ringing out across the valley with each strike. The bell had seen generations of monks come and go, each one using its sound as a signal to mark the beginning and end of meditation, meals, and chores. However, the bell was not just a tool for telling time. It was a symbol, a powerful representation of the mind, the bell itself being the vessel of wisdom, and the striker, the action that stirs it into resonance. One day, the bell ceased to ring. The head monk, Master Zenju, noticed the stillness in the temple courtyard as he walked past the bell. It had been quiet for several days, and no one seemed to know why. With a furrowed brow, he approached his young apprentice, Taro, who had been assigned to care for the bell. "Taro," Master Zenju asked, "why has the bell fallen silent?" The young monk bowed deeply. "Master, I do not know. I tried striking it, but the sound does not come. It seems as if the bell has forgotten its purpose." Master Zenju, with a thoughtful look, gazed at the bell and then back at Taro. Perhaps the bell has not forgotten its purpose, but rather it has been waiting for the right moment to reveal a deeper lesson. The bell without a striker. The bell was silent because, like the mind, it had become accustomed to depending on an external force, the striker, to create sound. The striker in this case represented action, the impulse of doing, the external stimulus that made the bell ring. But the true essence of the bell was not in the striker. It was within the bell itself. Master Zenju led Taro to the bell one morning and stood with him in silence. "Listen closely, Taro," he said. At first, Taro was confused. The bell was still silent. There was no strike, no sound. Yet, as he listened with more attention, he noticed something. There was an echo, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration in the air, a hum, a resonance that seemed to come from the bell itself without the strike. It was not the sound of a strike, but the bell's own presence in the world. The bell's true nature, Master Zenju explained, is not in the external action of the striker, but in its ability to resonate from within. When the bell is struck, it creates a sound, but that sound is not the essence of the bell. The true sound of the bell is found in the stillness, in the quiet vibration that exists even before the strike. Taro's eyes widened with realization. "The same is true for the mind," Master Zenju continued. "We often look for external actions to stir our lives, to create meaning, or to bring about change. But the true essence of life is not found in the external actions alone. It is found in the stillness and presence within." The search for sound Taro had spent much of his life trying to do. He had learned the rituals, practiced meditation, and followed the rules of the temple diligently. But he had always believed that he needed something outside of himself to awaken him, to stir his mind into clarity. He thought that the sound of the bell, like the thoughts that filled his head, was something that needed to be generated externally. But Master Zenju's lesson was clear. The bell's resonance, just like the clarity of the mind, comes not from something external. It comes from within. Presence is the striker. For many of us, life often feels like a constant search for external validation or change. We look for signs, we chase after accomplishments, and we wait for the world to provide the spark that will ignite our sense of purpose or meaning. Much like the bell, we rely on external stimuli to create the sound of our lives. We think that we need the perfect job, the right relationship, or the ideal circumstances to feel fulfilled. But the true nature of fulfillment does not come from these external forces. It comes from within. The bell does not need the striker to exist. It simply needs to resonate with its own presence. In the same way, we do not need external validation to know our worth. We do not need the world to act upon us to feel complete. True presence arises from the quiet space inside of us, from the stillness in which we can find clarity and connection. Master Zenju's lesson was one of deep wisdom. Presence itself is the striker. When we are fully present in our lives, when we stop waiting for external forces to stir us, we begin to resonate with the true sound of our being. Like the bell, we ring with clarity and purpose, not because something outside of us is forcing it, but because we are in tune with our own essence. The vibration of awareness. As Taro stood next to the bell, he began to understand. The bell did not need a striker to make sound. It had its own inherent ability to resonate. Similarly, the mind does not need external circumstances to be at peace or to find clarity. When we are fully present, we can connect with our inner stillness. The world around us may be chaotic, but in that stillness, we are at peace. In that stillness, we are whole. True awareness is like the hum of the bell before it is struck. It exists naturally, quietly, without effort. It does not depend on external actions to define it. It simply is. And when we tune into this awareness, when we allow ourselves to resonate with our true nature, we experience life with a depth and clarity that is not dependent on external factors. Resonating with life. The story of the bell without a striker is a reminder that the true nature of life does not come from the things we do, but from the presence we bring to every moment. We often look for answers in the world around us, believing that change will come from external circumstances. But in reality, the change we seek comes from within. It is in the stillness, in the quiet hum of our being, that we find the clarity we need to navigate the world. Master Zenju's teaching reminds us that true peace and insight are not found in external actions, but in our ability to connect with our inner presence. When we are fully present, we resonate with life itself. We do not need the world to strike us with force or urgency. We create our own sound by simply being who we are. Our presence, like the bell, resonates in harmony with the world around us. The silence between the strikes. Later, Taro would come to understand that it was not the absence of the striker that made the bell special, but the space between the strikes. The silence, the pause, was where the true resonance occurred. The sound of the bell could not exist without silence, just as true presence cannot exist without awareness. The bell without a striker is a symbol of the power of presence, of the ability to resonate with life even without external action. It is a reminder that we do not need to search for meaning in the noise of the world. We need only to be present, to listen to the stillness within, and to resonate with the truth of who we are.